Welcome to the Explore Words, Discover Worlds podcast from Bradford Literature Festival. In this episode, join a panel of professionals from Bloomsbury, Harper North and Wonderful for an insightful session on how to break into the publishing industry. Gain insights into the diverse career paths within publishing, from editorial to marketing, and discover what employers are looking for in candidates. Recorded live at the 2025 festival, this is the perfect chance to learn how to kickstart your publishing career.
Hi everyone, my name's James Reynoldson. I look after Writers and Artists, which is a website related to the Writers and Artists Yearbook. The Writers and Artists Yearbook is there to guide you through the writing and publishing process, but also offer guidance on who you might contact within the industry. So if you're looking for a career in publishing, then it's a really good resource for you to start your research. So welcome to this session we're putting on today as part of the Bradford Literature Festival. Thanks everyone for having us at the Bradford Literature Festival. We're going to be talking about careers in publishing today, and this event is it's been sponsored by Wonderful Recruitment very kindly. So thank you to Wonderful Recruitment for their support. We've got 4 brilliant speakers lined up for you today. So we've got Jasmine Horsey, Jonathan Ayers, Taslima Katan, and Dan Shepherd, who is from Wonderful Recruitment. So they're going to be talking about their roles within publishing and basically talking you through how they came to be in their current role and offer some guidance on how you might start your career in the industry. I think the best thing to do is for me to allow our panelists to introduce themselves. So maybe we go as like a top line question about what your current role is and what your typical sort of day in working life looks like right now. So if we start with Taslima, do you want to start, please?
Yeah, happy to start. My name's Taslima. I'm part of the Harper North team. Harper North is an imprint of HarperCollins, and our task is to discover Northern voices and bring their stories into the forefront, basically. I'm marketing and publicity assistant, so my daily tasks, I suppose, would be organising book signing tours, organising events like being at Bradford Literature Festival for our authors, sending out books to journalists, media, packaging the books and going to the post office to send them. That's the kind of stuff that I do in my current role.
Jasmine, do you want to go?
Yes, so I'm Jasmine Horsey. I'm editorial director for non-fiction at Bloomsbury. I think in terms of my day-to-day, my job can be split into 3 different responsibilities. One of them is acquiring books. So that means reading submissions from agents and determining whether that's something that we should take forwards as a publishing house, and then kind of getting that over the line with my colleagues. The second is editing. So once I've acquired those projects, working with the author to shape their writing, shape the structure of their book, and kind of that back and forth with the author. And then the third strand is the actual publishing. So that means everything from briefing the covers of those books to brainstorming the title to liaising with the marketing and publicity team about the campaign and all of the things that go into making the book a finished product that you would find in bookshops.
Jonathan.
Hi, so I'm Jonathan Ayers. I'm an editor at Bloomsbury, and like Jasmine, I only work on non-fiction books in-house, not on the same team. It's the first time we've met. I've been at Bloomsbury for 18 years, but that was a long time. I'm part-time at Bloomsbury. I only do non-fiction in Bloomsbury, but I also do fiction freelance, and we might discuss freelance stuff later. But in-house, I only do non-fiction, and I think this is something I wanted to address up front, because I think, how many editors are there at Bloomsbury, including the academic? It's probably about 150, 200. 80% of them are going to be working on non-fiction, because that is actually the largest bit of the publishing industry. All the headlines and all the bestsellers are, fiction, but, even if a book sells 1 million copies, still only needs 1 editor. So there are more opportunities on the non-fiction side. And if you want to get onto the fiction side, which is, a great place to be, there are more opportunities on the non-fiction side. And if you do have a non-fiction job, you can segue more easily into working on fiction, which is what I did with my freelance stuff. If you already have a non-fiction, job. So I wanted to get that in quickly, because I think people who are attracted to a publishing career often think it's all glamour and take whining and dining. Yeah, you're laughing. You've been a jaded veteran of the publishing industry. It's not about taking best-selling authors out for expensive lunches. It is the work of developing ideas and just working with somebody to make the best book, whether it's non-fiction or whether it's fiction. So even though the freelance stuff I do and the in-house stuff I do is quite different, fundamentally the development work, there are a lot of crossover skills. So it's kind of where I am now.
Thank you. Dan, do you want to talk a bit about where you are now?
So I'm the co-founder of Wonderful Recruitment and Development. So we're a recruitment business that specializes in publishing and the creative industries. We also work with publishers to help do training and development in-house for them. And a typical day is pretty varied. Most of the time, we try to focus all of our attention on meeting talented people, be they people in the industry, people who want to get into the industry, to try and help them figure out where their journey will go, continue, depending on where they are in that journey. And then the other half of that is talking to publishers to discover where they've got roles that they need filling, so that we can then do that kind of matchmaking to help continue to bring new and amazing talent into the business, across from publishing through to operations within publishers, printers, warehousing companies, wholesalers, the whole range.
So when we put this panel together, we wanted a real broad range, not just in terms of role, but in terms of like experience within the industry. So I want to talk a little bit about your journey to get to this point. And as you'll see, there's going to be quite a range. So Dan, you have a background in publishing prior to this, is that right? Yeah.
So I'm happy to put it on record. I wasn't planning to be in publishing when I started my university degree, which I did at business studies at Sheffield Hallam. And I had to work in my third year for a 48-week placement. At the time, Dorling Kindersley, DK, who were a large non-fiction illustrated publisher, still are, they needed a PA for their production director. Sheffield Hallam had a kind of link to DK. I applied for that role and I worked making tea for the production director. He gave me some more things to do as I got good at the tea. And I worked for a year in production, helping file all of the print orders, helping the printers kind of place their orders with us. So started there, went back to university, thought I was going to work in the city, but by that time actually felt I'd fallen in love with publishing. And then I moved in, Penguin bought DK. It's a kind of history of publishing going on here. And I moved into sales at Penguin. So I started off as a special sales account assistant. So I was selling books to people that weren't bookshops. So I sold books to Kellogg's, the cereal company, when they were doing promotions like that. Eventually, I became the children's sales director at Penguin, and I went on to be on the board of DK as the global sales and marketing director. I was CEO of Igloo, who were part of Bonnier, before I decided that I wasn't really good with a boss. So I thought I'd become my own boss, and was obsessed around helping people, had great mentorship myself, and could see that the industry is always going to need support in terms of helping people discover it. If they not necessarily want to be an editor, there's a whole bunch of people, there's a whole bunch of roles that are outside of the editorial and design that a lot of people who are great IT specialists, great operations people, might not think that publishing is their place. So was motivated with my business partner to start Wonderful from scratch. 5 years on, we work with 60 publishers, continue to enjoy every day getting a call when someone says you've made my journey come true.
Super inspiring, super interesting. And I want to keep going down because I think there's going to be more sort of like really inspiring nuggets to come from these guys, but I hope. But versatility, I think, is something that we're going to keep coming back to. You'll notice Dan's pivoted from a number of different roles in different parts of the industry. Yeah, and I think publishing is quite a broad church. So that versatility, I think, should give everyone a bit of hope wherever, whichever way you're going to come in. Jonathan, do you want to just talk a little bit about how you got in and then...
I started as an intern, and I was filling in, somebody cancelled, and so they gave me 2 weeks notice saying, can you fill in for this 2 to 3 months? And as I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, it's been 18 years now and I haven't managed to escape yet. On the first day of the internship, they got all the new interns together, and asked us, why are you here? It's not an existential question. It's literally why are you here? And I was the last person to go. The first person said something like, oh, I want to, find the next best-selling author. Somebody else said something about marketing. And I boldly said, and something you can only get away with when you're in your early 20s, like, I'm a writer and I'm here to learn how to get published. And I could see that they were very, very kindly, didn't roll their eyes, but that I could see that they were kind of used to, oh, here's another one. But I will add that 7 years later, Bloomsbury did publish my first novel. But so, mission accomplished. But through working in books, it did make me a better writer. And I when I do these things, I always point them out because I know there are lots of writers, maybe quiet ones, who look at publishing thinking, there's it's a good career to go into, and I completely agree. You do learn things that make you a better writer. But I know I'm digressing here, but I always like to say this.
Stay on track, Jonathan.
Yes, yeah, but my first job in publishing wasn't first. After the internship, it wasn't in editorial, and this is going back to what you said. I worked in rights for 2 or 3 years, which, does anyone know what rights is? So it's kind of selling foreign editions. It's very much at the very end of the publishing process. You have editorial commissioning books, then you have sales, selling them, marketing them. Rights is kind of selling foreign editions, and if you're lucky, it's like films and things like that. So I was working in that, not selling films, as an admin person, but I always wanted to get into editorial, and just being in a publishing company, not doing what I wanted to do, but just keeping my ear open for opportunities, that did help. I didn't even have to interview to go across. That building that network by being within the industry, and it has changed in the last 20 years, but publishing in those days used to be very kind of network based. It's like who you knew, and I didn't know anyone. So I knew I had to make those connections, but I think that has changed. And I think companies like Wonderful help people break in without having any kind of network, which wasn't there when I started, but it is there now, and I think it's a good thing.
Jasmine.
Thank you.
Yeah, so when I finished university, so I studied literature and I briefly worked in journalism, and I loved working with ideas and kind of with kind of things that were happening in the world at that time. And I ended up kind of deciding that publishing and working as an editor in nonfiction publishing was a way of being able to keep kind of working with those ideas, working with amazing people, working with, on stories and themes and topics that are relevant to everything that's happening in the world today. But in a slightly more, I felt that you were able to engage with these authors and these ideas kind of more deeply and more properly. So I ended up getting an internship at One World Publications, which is amazing, independent in London. And I did that, and I was applying for jobs at the same time. And then I got my job at Bloomsbury, where I was an editorial assistant to 2 publishing directors. I think the life of an editorial assistant, there's a lot more assistanting than editing. There's a lot of admin involved. There's, my day would involve doing everything from booking restaurants for my boss to take her authors out to lunch or agents out to lunch, to wrapping books up and writing the labels to send them out to, the media or to endorsers and the like. But from then on, my job has become kind of steadily more editorial, and I am now editorial director. So I've kind of remained within the same team, which has changed a lot, even in the past 8-9 years. And now I'm kind of responsible for my own list of books, and I publish about 8 to 12 books a year. So I have always kind of been within the same company in terms of my publishing journey so far.
Do you want to have a go? So you've been at Harper North for 2 years, you said?
2 years now, yeah.
Okay, so what was that journey like?
So at university, I studied in Manchester. I studied linguistics and art history. There was never really any plan for me to join publishing because I didn't see anyone like myself there. I'm very working class, Muslim, from the north. So I didn't really see anyone like me in publishing who are very glamorous and very southern. So that was never really on my cards. And I left university at the start of my 3rd year, so just before COVID, because I struggled a lot at university. So I left without a bachelor's degree. I left with a higher diploma degree instead. And then I was like, well, there's no way you're going to get into publishing without at least a master's. So then I went into book selling. I worked at Waterstones in Manchester and I loved every single minute of it. And then the Harper North started hiring for a communications assistant. So I was like, I might as well try. I didn't really expect to get it. So the HarperCollins hiring system is anonymous. So it's through a recruitment platform called Be Applied. So you don't actually put in any of your details. You answer a set of 6 questions and they'll rate you on how well you answer them. And I answered them very well. So I got an interview. That's when we talked about me as a person. So there's 3 stages: the anonymous face-to-face interview and then the final interview where they set you tasks. Overall, it went very well. I got the job. I've been there for 2 years. It's very lovely, very, very quaint, but really exciting. Things are changing and things are like looking up. So yeah, that's my very small years in publishing so far.
It's super interesting though, Taslima, because I sort of mentioned about versatility, and one of the things that's come up in all of your answers is about sort of like publishing adjacent roles being really. So as a bookseller, that must have, what skills did you take from that which you carried through into this current role?
Bookselling, basically knowing about books, knowing what's working, what's not working. One of the main things that I can remember that cropped up at my interview was that, do you actually know what's happening in the industry? Do you know what's selling and what's not selling? What the publishing industry is looking to kind of amplify, what they are moving towards, rather than, well, at Harper North, from my experience, we're always trying to uncover unheard voices or voices that really maybe won't get to the forefront as easily. So book selling really helped with that, because you find the smaller indie presses, you find the kind of genres that a large publisher might not want to take the risk on. And also like just admin stuff, like you said, like a lot of publishing is admin. Like, so when I started at Harper North, I didn't know how to write a professional email. So the day before I started at Harper North, I had my outfit, I had my new bag, I had my new journal. And then I just didn't know how to use Teams. I didn't know how to use Outlook. I didn't know how to sign off an email. I kept asking my manager, do I write yours faithfully, sincerely? She was like, just write bye. And then that was, those are the kind of things that I was able to transfer over into like a new role.
And Jasmine, so you were talking about like wrapping up books and doing, so you were absorbing stuff, I would imagine, like subconsciously.
Yeah.
Which has gone on to inform decisions or contacts that you've now got?
Yeah, definitely. I think, the first, often in editorial at least, you will be kind of tied to working with maybe 1, 2, 3, sometimes more editors. So you're kind of responsible for, the day-to-day running of all of the books publishing on their side. And I think it gives you such a great opportunity to kind of shadow different personalities, even if those editors are publishing in areas that you are fairly confident you probably won't be. Like I started out working for an editor who specialized in nonfiction, one that did nonfiction and fiction. And I loved the fiction side of things as well. But I think I kind of knew I wanted to specialize in nonfiction. But I feel like that knowledge that I gained through having quite a wide base to begin with has been so useful, because, nowadays I work with nonfiction authors whose style is very novelistic and who write kind of like, their books read like fiction. And so that experience of having shadowed an editor working on something different was really, really useful. So I would say when you're kind of starting out and entering, particularly within editorial, I wouldn't worry too much if the person or the editor that you're working for doesn't seem, isn't publishing exactly what you might want to publish in time. It's all kind of very good experience to get.
Jonathan, would you have anything to add in terms of if you were going to think about crossover skills that you've acquired, or you'd have any advice for these guys? What would you...
I mean, do you mean in terms of working in rights first, or working across
publishing? So I think I'm sort of putting words in your mouth here, sorry, but like I would say that because I know for a fact you're a voracious reader, and that like knowing, like exactly as you said, like having a map of what's going on and understanding the industry can only help you.
Yeah. And actually, I mean, it's interesting listening to what you said, because I think that's a change that's happened in publishing quite recently, that they kind of respect knowledge and experience from without the industry. being on the coalface of hand selling books and seeing, where when people come to bookshops, where do they gravitate towards? That's knowledge that you don't get when you're just sitting there looking at a spreadsheet, which I think publishing was, 10 years ago, going towards metrics and looking at spreadsheets and seeing, oh, well, that sells there and that sells there, and trying to commission around that, at least on the bit of publishing I was in. But I think it has changed now, and it used to be that everyone had to have a degree to get a job in publishing, and now they realize actually, having a degree is good. It shows, commitment and a certain level of, particularly if you do a literature degree, reading level, but also, there are other, knowledge bases that not having a traditional route into publishing actually is beneficial to the actual day-to-day business. I think that's quite a recent development, but I think it's definitely a positive one. I think you speak to that better than I do, but it's something that, for me being in industry for almost 20 years, noticing that change, that's positive shift in your direction.
Dan, can I just jump in there? So I would say, like, we're talking about all these different roles. Where can people find them?
So there's only one place to go, wonderfulrecruitment.com. Don't look anywhere else, just go straight there. So there's a variety of places, I'd say. The Bookseller, which is kind of the industry press, is a great place to go. Obviously, I'd suggest looking at all the major publishing houses, following them. There are a lot of small independent publishers which are really worth following on their socials. Dear ChatGPT, give me the 200 independent publishers in the UK. That answer helps me a lot on a daily basis. It can help you. So it's kind of being nosy and curious about what those people are doing. On LinkedIn, there are places like the Creative Careers Hub, which is helping people who are starting out into the industry. So a variety of different places, and also on the, let's call it on the periphery of publishing, there's agents, there's places like Fane who are doing live spoken word events for publishing. There's companies like that you can be following, looking at what they're doing, look at the roles they have. So it does involve resilience. It does involve, if you're committed to wanting to get into the industry, you kind of have to have a good sphere of all of those things going on, and places and events such as this.
Yeah. So those publishing adjacent roles, like a lot of people we talk to really into getting into editorial, and perhaps they don't realise that there's so much heavy editorial work that goes with being a literary agent, for example. So if you're going in as maybe as a reader for a literary agent, and then you sort of like develop your taste there, and you get an opportunity, then all of a sudden you could be thrown in with quite a heavy editorial task. From your point, when do you do your reading, Jasmine? That's what I wanted to ask you before, because you've got a lot of
my editing, reading submissions. Yeah, you have to be quite disciplined about it, because I think one of the challenging things about being an editor and receiving submissions from agents is that you have no control as to when those are going to land. So you might be in the middle of publishing a book, and then a really kind of important big submission lands at 4 p.m. on a Thursday, and you kind of have to be able to be nimble enough to kind of drop what you're doing and pay attention to it, because otherwise it could move too quickly for you to act on it. So there's a degree of kind of improvisation, as in something lands and you have to read it. In terms of my actual editing, so editing the manuscripts that come in from authors and shaping them, I'll try and kind of block aside certain days. Fridays are good editing days where there aren't millions of meetings, because you really need that time to immerse yourself in the manuscript and not be pulled away by various emails and Teams messages. So it's definitely, I improvise.
So it's a question that came to mind, because I always ask the agents this. I'm like, your 9 to 5 is very busy as it is. Yes. It must be all consuming, sometimes. Yeah,
definitely. I think there are a lot of meetings in publishing, and publishing a book is the work of so many dozens of people. It's conversations with marketing and publicity, it's conversations with production, it's conversations with our rights team who are about to go kind of sell a book at a book fair and whatnot. So it's very, very collaborative in a way that I really appreciate. It means that you're in constant contact with people across the business. But I think publishing has probably changed in that I think 20 or so years ago, I think there were there was probably a bit more time for editors to edit, and I think now there are a lot of meetings and emails to deal with as well. So it's a bit of a juggling act, but we make it work.
We've done a few of these events across the last couple of years, and editorial is like a main sort of like driver in terms of interest, marketing as well, and design. But Dan, have you seen like a rise in the non-traditional sort of roles with it? Because as I said, like we've known at Bloomsbury that it's a broad church. Things like audio is massive now. Yeah, there's careers in IT for our, brilliant IT team.
Yeah, I mean, so if I was to look at my sort of monthly roster of roles I have coming in, and I don't want to put anyone off becoming an editor here, not many roles come up, right? They're not the most frequent roles aside of their importance to the industry. So you're absolutely right. Audio's become a huge thing. Marketing and PR has always been, but the kind of the roles within marketing PR, social.
Well, content creation.
Content creation is hugely important. Events is a huge part of what publishers now have to do. So, one of my favorite hires is for a small publisher that was looking for someone to help do their event planning for their authors. And we placed someone who had grown up in Covent Garden in central London, and as a hobby, he was a club promoter. No real relation to authors, but knew how to put on an amazing night and knew how to get people there and having a good time. And we matched him into a publishing role,
Amazing.
Which was something that we're all very proud of. He did all the hard work, but that's an example of a role that is kind of wider. But production, I'm screaming out for production controllers. They're a kind of, they're a rare beast in the industry. They're so important. The books have to be out. They have to be produced. They've got to be on time. They've got to be on to price, and that is a huge part. And there's not so many people that are always going into that area. So it's a great way into the industry. Assistants within production companies are always interested to meet. So operations, sales, which is close to my heart. That's where they booted me out of production in Penguin because they could see that I like talking a lot, as you can guess too. So yeah, continually growing.
So I'm going to just carry on with this. Sorry, Dan, just for a sec. So in terms of that using your example of the guy who does a club promoter, I suppose what these people might be looking for is a little bit of guidance as to how to hone their CV or their application to sort of finesse and bring out those.
Okay. So I feel quite strongly about this. I'm not saying it's the way. If you go on to Insta, there's 25,000 people telling you 1 page, 2 page, do this at the top, this at the bottom. I'm kind of not, that's not what I preach or talk about. So I suppose authenticity and being proud of what you are and what you think you're good at shines through on a CV. Now, I'm talking about it as a recruiter where I get CV in. It is my job to look at them all day long and try to really kind of see the great ones. Sometimes in a publishing house, then you might be getting 600 applications for. So it's slightly harder when it's going through, a tracking system. But when I look at CVs and we spend, I suppose it's like your editing time, we get CVs and we try to dedicate good time to look at them all. Authenticity shows through, and being able to clearly demonstrate the achievements of whatever you have done that you're proud of. So we see CVs where people have done amazing things. They're just not very clear about what the net effect of that was and what part they played. And when we read those ones that are very clear, it's a lot easier for someone like myself to go to talk to one of these guys and say, I've got this amazing person. They don't have tick, 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 all the things you're looking, but look how brilliant they were at this. Look what the difference they made. Look what the outcome was. And that cuts through to people. So make it sound like you, because that's who the company's going to employ. And that's the long term. And I think where I see authenticity, where I see really, really clear detail on what you've achieved, 1 page, 2 pages, those kind of things are up to taste. But they're the things that stand out for me.
Amazing. Taslima, it sounds like you nailed your application.
I did.
So if you were going to give some guidance to these guys, what would it be like, just thinking back about your journey? And
exactly as Dan said, authenticity. When my now manager met me for the first time, she still mentions about how when she met me that I was proud of who I was and I was proud of my achievements, and I knew exactly what I wanted to do in the role that I was applying for. So I knew that, so I started out as a communications assistant. So I knew that admin, I knew that knowing how to speak to people, which came from being a bookseller. I knew how that those were going to help me in my current role, rather than thinking too much about what I didn't have. It was more about what I did have and embellishing it until it polished. So once you're in there, then you can see really what there is in the company. Because I didn't know about rights. I didn't know about how having a law degree would help working in a publishing firm. I didn't know about design, didn't know about audio, even though HarperCollins always publishes in audio. Didn't know anything about that, but I did know what I was good at. And then I kept speaking about it until it was undeniable that I would have to have the role. Actually, another thing that I didn't mention in my hiring process was that I also had a book blog on Instagram. So this was before Book Talk and book influencers was a thing. It was a very niche, very small corner of like Tumblr, if anybody remembers Tumblr, and Instagram. And I used to post pretty pictures of my books with their coffee. So then I knew exactly what I liked, and it kind of fed into what Harper North was publishing at the time. And also the book blogging helped me find the Harper North role because it just came up on my feed. I didn't go looking for it, it came up on my feed because that's kind of what I was consuming online. So that's how I found it.
Nice. See, yeah. And Jasmine, so when you've got editorial assistants coming through, you'll probably see a little bit of you in them. You see what I mean? What do you sort of like? Do you offer them any guidance, or are there any like ways in which you might, if they're not confident, for example, do you help them through, or how does that work?
Yeah, definitely. I think, assistants and usually work very, very closely with the editor that they're attached to, which is amazing because there's so much kind of shadowing opportunities that come with that. So I think, when with the assistant that I work with, if there are any kind of areas that they would like to develop or anything that they would like more exposure to, maybe it's a particular project that they're really passionate about or a kind of book that they're really passionate about, those are opportunities for them to work more closely with me, and we can kind of, we can ramp up how involved they are. They can shadow me on an edit. And I think also for things like, they would like more experience of leading meetings or speaking in meetings. Maybe we work towards them briefing a cover in a couple of months' time. So I think, yeah, there are lots of opportunities to kind of basically to shadow and grow in that sort of editorial assistant role.
And Jonathan, it sounds like that's what you did. You just were like, you were in the role and you had your ears open and...
Yeah, being open to opportunities is important. But I'd to pick up something you said. You mentioned like 600 applicants for a job, and there was an editorial assistant, not in my department, but in people next door, where they had 850 for an editorial assistant role. And I think some people will be listening to that and thinking, those are bad odds. The important thing here is that it's not a lottery. It's not luck. And I think what Taslima was saying, 650 of those are just going to be perfectly good candidates on paper. They've all got exactly the same degree. And that's the problem, that the identikit. The ones who stand out, the ones who get interviewed, and realistically, we're not going to interview hundreds of people. We're going to try and narrow it down to a dozen, maybe 20 at absolute most. The ones that stand out, and it's going to be what is different about you, what is going to help the business. And I think, obviously, I don't know if I'm going to steal your point, but you had something that made you stand out from the people who perhaps had, a better degree at a southern university. That doesn't really matter in the end. It's like you had something that made them think, so this is somebody who can. We already got plenty of people who are doing this, who come from exactly the same background. This person's got something different. So it's identifying what have you got that's a little bit different, and it can be hard to know that because you're not inside the industry. Don't necessarily know what people are looking for. I think that's part of what's helped recruitment agencies and publishing. It is certainly a lot bigger now than when I was trying to get into the industry, because you help finesse, find that your unique selling point. But have a think about what is it that's different about you, and don't hide that. Really put it up front and center. Whatever it is, that little bit of difference about you could be that thing that makes them interview you and hire you ahead of someone else.
I mean, I think that's one of the things that I was sort of alluding to in my question to Dan. Like the industry is always changing. It's changed massively, hasn't it, over the past 10 years in terms of roles. And I think what you were saying as well before about those those old networks and that idea is kind of fading out a little bit.
Definitely.
Is that probably, publishing seems quite an intimidating place to those people that are not in it, and lack of opportunity and, you know, nepotism or whatever those words are like thrown around. Is that a thing of the past, do we think? Is that, you know, is it a, what's the word? Like it's I forget the word, but it's like something that's no longer true of publishing.
I suppose we want to go on record for the entire industry and say there's no nepotism going on. I would say that the vast majority of publishers are very mindful that they need different voices, different talent in their business to stay very relevant and make the difference that they need to be to continue to be a successful business.
A myth was what I was thinking. It's like as in like these are myths which are like passed on from.
So I think they're definitely going.
Yeah,
they are absolutely going. And I can say that obviously with the publishers that I work with, I hear on a daily basis, you know, when you show me a short list of candidates, show me some range of people, show me some interest, show me some that, you know, we always say, you know, if I send a short list of say 6 or 8 candidates for a role, there probably is 2 people that are kind of tick all of the boxes in the middle, and it would be wrong of me not to do that. They're potentially the right person for the role. But we love putting people who are slightly to the left and slightly to the right, who maybe not have all of those things, but they just stood out or they just had something about them that you were like, you need to see these people. And we're only a 5-year-old business, but I've seen in 5 years, publishers, publishing people really embracing that because they can see why it's critically important as a business and as a cultural thing that we are as an industry. And it makes a difference to the industry. Even 5 years ago, people said, just show me show me the people that just tick all the boxes. And now actually people say, I'm actually really interested to see the kind of the left and the right of your shortlist. And quite frankly, the people that don't want to do that with us, we don't want to work with them.
Yeah, okay.
So we're quite picky about who we want to work with on the basis of, do we have the same shared values? So as an example, there are some roles that require a university degree, like, you know, lawyer, probably an accountant. You want to know that they've got ACCA or they've got those kind of things. I don't really want to take a role on if it says must have a degree, because none of my family had degrees and they all went on to be really successful people. So it doesn't discount them if you do or don't have it, but I'm starting to see less of that and more of show me people that have done stuff. You know, as you were talking about your Tumblr, you know, your blog or running your own nightclub or your hobby or your book club that you've got running all over your local town. People are genuinely interested in those things. And it's my role, I see as what we do as a business, is to demonstrate those people to the industry as much as we can and try and get people on board to understand why they're brilliant.
Amazing. Jonathan, I'm keen to go back to your point on, we want to touch on your freelance side. So is that a decision that you had your full-time job at Bloomsbury, but you had a fiction?
Yeah, I mean, I'm part-time at Bloomsbury now, and I think, I mean, when I started, publishing was very rigid, but actually, I think Bloomsbury's maybe at the forefront of that, of being quite flexible and realizing that you can have talented people who are maybe not 9-to-5 people and people who have other interests, and actually that feeds back into being, you know, useful to the business. And how can you support that? Do you hire more people to kind of pick up the slack that comes in? So, you know, so I had to negotiate that. But I mean, I want to go freelance full time, and, you know, that probably will be a possibility in a couple of years. I mean, I don't know if you want me to talk about the money.
Do give me a call, by the way.
Okay.
Well, should we talk about the money? It's something that comes up.
Yeah. You know, there are. I'm probably segueing now. That, you know, publishing was notoriously underpaid in terms of a middle class career. You know, you've got your university, you've got your university debt, and now you're going to go into a job that pays for it, and that wasn't the case. And I think it has changed, but probably not as much as it needs to. No, but there is a lot more money in freelance stuff. But, you know, if you're an editor, it is quite easy to pick up a lot of freelance work. Less so if you're in sales or rights, maybe publicity. There is
Bit of flexibility.
Yeah. But there's some roles within publishing that there is no freelance capacity, but editorial, there are so many people who get to about 40 and then think, I can make more money for myself, leaving a publishing company and taking the skills that I've gained in 20 odd years within a publishing company and selling them to a range of publishers rather than just one who, going back to my previous point about how, there can be 800 applicants for an editorial role. When there's more competition for jobs, they can typically get away with paying less. And I think publishing historically has not been paying people as much as other graduate level careers, and that's true, isn't it? It has got a bit better. It's still going to be an issue. It's still going to be an ongoing issue, because I think when you look at job adverts for publishing, they say we pay a competitive salary, and often my perception of that is they're saying actually they're competing with other publishing companies who are also underpaying people. They're not competing with comparable, completely different industries. And this is something to bear in mind. Obviously, publishing has become less London-centric, but still, the bulk of the industry is London-based, and London is a very expensive city to live in. And I don't think salaries have really kept up with that. It's changing, but not fast enough and hard enough.
Benchmarking happens, though, yeah, more with publishers. So I don't know. I think Jonathan's right in that it's changing, but I think we are myth busting slightly, because it definitely was way lower before, and you probably couldn't do it unless you had some sort of support, which that's where that middle class sort of career came from.
20 years ago when I started, very much so. I got paid for my internship, but there was, I won't name him, but there was somebody who became the head of the Publishers Association, who was very much an advocate for nobody should be paid for their first year in publishing. So you weed out the people who don't want it enough. This is somebody who's a legend in publishing, and that was very much his philosophy, that people shouldn't be paid for an entire year, because then you only get the people who wanted enough, that's complete rubbish. He was a wealthy man. You look at your normal background, I'm from a working class background as well. It's I couldn't have afforded to do that. Those are the people you're weeding out. I'm going to get my soapbox in a minute and be, but yeah.
And I think we should, so I am going to stress as the chair of this, that's not how it is now.
No, it's 20 years ago. It's 20 years ago.
Yeah. So now I think there's a lot of pressure on publishers to make sure that salaries are sort of labelled and the benchmarking happens. And yeah, as a broad brush sort of point of view, it's not going to pay as well as other industries, but I think the pay has definitely sorted itself out. So there's nobody left needing to sleep on a relative's floor or whatever to make their way. Okay, so we've dealt with entry-level roles and how to maybe get in. We talked about making sure that you're super authentic in how you approach your CV and any documents that you have to submit, making sure, as Taslima said, you concentrate on what you are good at. And publishing adjacent roles are a super useful way in: bookselling, agenting, nightclub, anything that. But you've got to be real about your reading. This is not something you switch on. I think you've got to be all consuming. Dan mentioned the bookseller. I think that is, the publishing's obsessed with the bookseller, so that is a good place to start. I think we should take some questions from you guys at this point, because we've got about 10 minutes or so. Does anybody have any questions that they might like to ask about?
Before we do it, can I just add one other thing to the CV?
Yeah.
So this is a kind of just my suggestion of something to do to keep is, so our friend ChatGPT is writing very good cover letters right now.
I thought that might come up. So go on. Yeah.
So when we're submitting candidates through to publishers, we don't send cover letters anymore, because I see really good CVs and job descriptions mixed, and they sound amazing. One of the things that we ask people to do is to set out a list of we call them proud points, achievement points, and they're paragraphs 5, 6 paragraphs that are in your writing about you that you're proud of in or outside of work, but they're things that if I'm submitting a CV, my notes on the person that I've talked to, I can also say, just have a read about this. These are the 5 or 6 things that they're really proud of as a person, and it gets someone kind of under the skin a bit more quickly. So any candidate that we're talking to, whether we have a live job or whether we're just having a general how can we help them, we'll always say, go away, depending on how introvert or extrovert or how much you love talking about yourself, just write down 5 or 6 things that you're really proud of things you've done. And it will always be useful in an application, an interview, and also, and if you were to deal with recruiters, in us getting that information over to people. So I just want to say that.
No, that's really useful. Yeah. Questions? Go on.
Hi there. I've got a question about freelancing. Obviously, you work freelance. Jonathan?
Yes.
Work freelance. Do the publishers that you work with, Harper North and Bloomsbury, do they outsource copywriting and proofreading to freelancers?
I mean, I'll take the proofreading, all of it. We don't do it. You know, we publish so many books now. We don't have the scope to do the in-depth proofreadings, all proofreading, and actually a lot of copy editing as well. I mean, a lot of the in-house job that I do as an editor is project management. So it's corralling a lot of freelancers, whether it's designers, because I do a lot of color illustrated books, copy editors, and proofreaders. So, and I think that's also a trend that in time I've been in the industry, there's less work done in-house because we have to do more and more books and there's less time. So, I mean, absolutely, with proofreading, 95% of it is done by trusted freelancers.
So my next question, because my background is in bookselling as well, many years ago. I've worked in education for the past 20 years, but prior to that I worked in bookselling. So I'm thinking of studying with the Publishing Training Centre. Is that a reputable
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
courses to do? Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you.
Hiya. So you touched on publishing being quite London-centric, and I was wondering if you could sort of elaborate on that. Are there any kind of ways into publishing roles, maybe outside of London and in the North in particular?
You work for Harper North, so you take that one. It is. I'll just say it is changing, and I think COVID helped with that. Just a brief anecdote: in the midst of the second lockdown, we were told we had to hire somebody who could come into the office if we opened next week, and we got very few applicants for this role. It was quite a high role, it's a commissioning editor role, and we got very few applicants. And then we were told we could open it up to be a remote role, and then we got the best selection of candidates that, you know, for any job that we've advertised, and they were all over the country. And I think that COVID helped that realization. Actually, there's a pool of talent all over the place. I think Collins is particularly is ahead of the game here. They are opening up offices elsewhere. It is changing, not fast enough, but, you know,
slowly but surely.
Yes. Yeah.
So at HarperCollins, we've got regional offices. We've got Harper North is based in Manchester. We've got an office in Honley, and we've got an office in Glasgow as well, and Ireland. Actually, we have an office in Ireland as well. I know Hachette have an office in Manchester as well, and Hachette also have an office in Sheffield. But there's also one, not Bolton. There's another city beginning with B down south that I can't remember, but they have Bristol. Is that down south? Is Bristol? Yeah, they have one in Bristol as well. A lot of indie publishers also in Manchester, and I think you guys haven't. Sorry, no, you guys. Bradford also has a indie publisher who's very focused on doing South Asian publishing.
But these are all publishers, events.
Yeah.
There's events, bookshops. There will be agencies who are around as well. Maybe just think about. Take a helicopter view of what you want to do and think whatever you choose or whatever you apply for, how is that going to feed into that ultimate goal? So
the bigger publishers are based in London, so they've got their regional hubs coming or have them in place. And in 2021, it looked like it was going to be 1 day a week in the office and you could kind of work anywhere you wanted to. That has slowly gone back to 3 days now, some 4. So that London centricness is still there with some of the bigger publishers, but I work with a print broker in Cheshire, I've got 3 publishers, one in Leicester, one in Cornwall. So they're smaller publishers and events companies and marketing and PR agencies that are based all over the country. You have to find them. Come talk to us. We can help you find them if you've got particular regional location needs about where you want to be. But you kind of have to sort of, and no offense to the bigger publishers, you kind of have to go past that layer a bit and see all of the other businesses that are out there that are dotted all over the country because they're maybe looking for lower overhead, or the company that I hire for who are based in Cornwall, they get all of their design and editorial talent coming out of Exeter and Bristol University, and they don't get the kind of London drain going on. So
it's even things like museums.
Yeah.
They'll have presses or...
Yeah. Universities have presses that will need people that are in local location. So it is just a bit of a puzzle if you're doing it on your own. We can help, but it is out there. You just have to kind of find what it is, and as you rightly say, have a bit of a helicopter view about what it is you're looking to do.
Next, do you want to...
I'm interested in your 5 or 6 proud points thing. Obviously, as someone I work in education as well, that's probably not that relevant, but if I've got stuff that I do that's away from that, would that be the thing that you'd want to focus on more in those proud points?
So I suppose I'd question your first comment, which was I work in education, it might not be that relevant. I'd probably, if we sat down for an hour, we could probably pick that apart and find 20 very, very relevant points around what you do in education that a publisher or a publishing company might find really interesting. Children's publishers, for example, are trying to get into the heads of children to understand why most of them don't want to read, for example, and depending on what classroom setting you're in or what environment you're in, you probably see why they do or don't do those things. So first point I'd say is I bet there's loads of relevance in there, but in and outside of work, 100%. It's about how you demonstrate the thing that you're proud about, the difference it makes, and why it might be really helpful or useful to add value to a business if you were to come in. And we would tweak and move them around depending on what role it is and who the publisher is. But I would say they're all really relevant.
Any more? Yeah.
Hi, I'm far too ancient to be embarking on a career in publishing. I'm actually here on behalf of our son, who lives in Berlin, and where he's been teaching English at a Berlin School of English for the last 10 years. But it's freelance because that's the nature of this type of work, apparently. And he really wants to have something that's more secure. And he has expressed an interest in editing. I'm not quite sure whether you have any kind of remit or any advice for someone who's not living in this country but is in Berlin, or should he actually come back here? There's a challenge for you.
I can anecdotally give you an answer to this. I used to teach abroad and basically went through the same process as your son. I just looked at exactly as you said about there'll be ELT publishers. They'll want to know someone who's been at the coalface in the classroom. Could be copywriting with them, and that could be the point of difference to the other applicants who are just looking for a burgeoning career in publishing. If he's got on the ground experience as a publisher, was it Berlitz was out in Germany? Yeah. So they're all viable options for him and he should use his teaching career as an asset. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. So there's a thriving publishing business in Germany who will publish in German and in English. So there's a whole market there. He'd have to go find them. All of your publishers are global publishers and are interested in the globalization of publishing gets bigger and bigger. Rights becomes a more and more important part of a business because a lot of P&Ls, sorry, I try to not talk in all publishing.
No jargon.
Low jargon. When you're looking at the cost of putting a book together, sometimes it won't make sense if you're just publishing it in the UK in English because you've got lots of retail constriction going on. So global sales are really, really important. So there would absolutely be opportunities. You just have to find them and I would put to the front, kind of like your comment around his teaching and what those assets are, and try to line those up to maybe an academic or an educational or a travel guide publisher.
He'll be reading those books and he'll be saying, bloody hell, I could write that better than, that exercise isn't set out in a way that exactly. Yeah.
He should absolutely use the website, yeah.
Everyone should.
Everybody should. Yes. Yeah, we place people all over the world. Place people in Australia, just placed somebody in Spain. It's an international business, so it's a global business. You know, Bloomsbury have offices in the US, which are huge, and kind of that networking is a nice, healthy network to have. That's not got the nepotism around it. It's the how do you move people around.
Yeah, and just to add to that point, look, even before COVID, all of the business of publishing is done via email now, basically. So it doesn't matter where you are. We work with freelancers all across Europe, Australia, and the US. It's a little, minor admin point that you have to, work out what time zone someone's in. If you want a quick response, that's the only issue. Where someone is, it doesn't matter.
Any other questions?
Given what you were saying about not being particularly interested in degrees, given that there's a push towards using a narrative CV instead of an academic CV now, would you...
Oh, what, sorry?
A narrative CV instead of an academic CV. Would you prefer that if somebody were approaching you?
I'm not quite sure I understand the question. Go on. Sorry, I don't want to give you the right answer.
I teach creative writing at Leeds, so I have 60-odd kids to kick off into this industry at the end of every year, and I'm trying to give them advice. We're now advised to use a narrative CV instead of a standard CV. Are you familiar with?
So we see both. As hopefully I said at the beginning, I, as a recruiter, don't have a preference around what and how it looks like. No, I do have a preference about what. I care about the content within it. And if somebody wants to present themselves in a fully narrative way and they can get that point across in a way that is articulate, I would not be going back to them saying, I want this up here and this here and those things. So we don't focus on that structure particularly. We're focusing on what's in there. And for us, it's then about meeting that person and then kind of getting to know them. And what we will do is summarize and try to kind of focus in on those key points for them. So probably a slightly politician's answer by saying, I haven't got a preference. It depends what the words are saying is the bit that I care most about.
Yeah.
I wanted to know a bit more about the operations and production roles you were mentioning, because I am personally a project manager and I am eager to change industries, whether it's in this role or in another one. And publishing has always been a dream. And from the sounds of it, production or operations might be a good transferable skill set.
Yeah.
But project management as well is...
Project management. I mean, I don't want to speak on behalf of creative people, but for all creative teams, there are project management teams sitting around those people, keeping things to deadline, making sure that you've got the creative space to do the work you need to do. So yeah, even within editorial or within other areas of the business, sought after.
What sort of hours would you expect? Are you expected to work outside your contracted hours?
Publishing's for life, isn't it? Yeah.
I suppose as an assistant, I work... So my contracted hours are 4 days a week. If we've got events that fall out of that, I will be expected to pick it up. And because we're also a slightly smaller team, the whole team does the reading, even the marketing and publicity team. And that usually is done outside of hours. So I'd say maybe like an afternoon or two extra if it's not an event, which I don't think is that bad.
I'm guessing there are other academics in here. When we mark, we give extra time to it. Of course we do.
Yeah.
Paid enough.
Exactly. You don't want to turn up to a meeting not having read the book.
I think it's more a case of if you're not prepared or not able to put in the extra hours.
I mean, sometimes I don't do the reading and I still turn up to the meeting, then it's totally fine. I think for me personally, I said before I started that I'm not going to do extra time that I don't need to do. But then the longer I've been there, the more natural it has become to kind of reach for my laptop and see what's happening. And you just kind of have that natural inclination to, I don't know if it's a healthy work kind of habit, but it's a habit that
you're passionate about.
Yeah, that I'm passionate about and that I do nurture rather than like put myself down.
Again, so I'm going to go back. Sorry, Jasmine, you were going to...
Yeah, I was just going to say, I definitely don't think there's any kind of... It's not enforced that we will work kind of beyond our contracted hours. Absolutely not. No. And I think it's very kind of clearly laid out that, that shouldn't be the case. And within our team, no one's going to send me an email past working hours. I'm not going to receive emails at 9 p.m. with my boss asking me to do something. But I think it is an industry of a lot of passionate people who are drawn to it because they love it. And so I think inevitably you're going to attract people who probably do put in extra time or like do want to go to an event after work and see their author in action. So it's kind of probably a bit like, yeah.
That's what I'm pleased Jasmine said that, because I think that's another myth which we're going to...
It is a myth.
Yeah, that it's gone, definitely post-pandemic. Gone are the days where it's like you've got if you're the last to leave the office, then, you know, that means you're a good worker. People juggle their lives in a different way now. And as long as it gets done, it depends on your relationship with the boss. I think we've all sort of said, like, our bosses are quite, if you need to take an afternoon because you've got childcare or whatever, as long as it happens in a way that's well communicated, then everyone's quite a lot more relaxed. But I think you are, as you said about your marking, with things like reading, we spend a lot of time in the company of literary agents as part of the writers and artists job, and they all say, like, the reason that they want their manuscript submissions in such a way is because they're doing it on the tube, on their Kindle, and it is the most manageable way for them to quickly receive the information in a way that's going to allow them to consider you. And it must be exactly the same when you're reading manuscripts. You've got to do that, but that's kind of what draws you to the industry and the role in the first place, I would say.
And in fact, I think now someone leaving very late, 8 or 9 o'clock, would probably tell you something. Either they've got too much work or they're not doing not approaching the project in the right way. I don't think that's not a sign of healthiness within the business anymore. It's a sign of either they need more support or something's not working.
Someone got locked in our office the other week because it was like 6:30. The cleaner was like, you know, whereas 10 years ago, 9 o'clock, there'd be still people rattling around the office, and I think those days are gone.
I think they're definitely gone.
Yeah. I think COVID helped there, because I think, Bloomsbury, we were shut for about 2 years, which was far longer than all the lockdowns, and I think they learned then that there's a lot of overspill, that people were doing work at this point, and I think they responded to that quite positively, saying, introducing core hours, where it's like, okay, so you have to be here for this time, and you have to do this number of hours, but they're not expecting you to be. It's not rigid.
Yeah.
But also part of that was, if you can do work at this time, do it at that time, but there's no expectation for you to be there at the moment. If my boss has got young children, she has to do the school run, so she's often there very early, and she's then often there quite late. She's not expecting anyone to be there for that full time, even though she might need them. There used to be that kind of expectation that if you were an assistant, you were the first person through the door and the last person out. That's gone now. I think there is a greater respect for work-life balance.
Yeah.
Me, I work to rule. My boss is fine with that. I don't know if I'd have that confidence, though, if I was starting out to say, well, this is what I'm contracted to do, that's what I'm doing. Isn't finished, I'm going to leave for another day. I do now, because I did allow things to creep beyond, what I was actually getting paid to do, and you don't get paid overtime, so why bother?
Taslima does have the confidence to say no, I reckon.
Yeah.
What's it like socially at Harper North? Because you've been there 2 years, so that's another myth where you were part of the gang and you stayed and had a beer or whatever. But I think that's changed as well now within publishing. Is it? And what Bloomsbury's, I can only speak from Bloomsbury's perspective, but they've put a lot more energy into meeting areas, and there's now coffees and things like that. Is that the same at Harper North, or
do we have a coffee machine?
Well, no, just is there outside of those hours that you do, is it has it affected your relationship with the wider working team, the fact that people are a little bit more fluid in their working hours?
No, I think it's like how Jonathan said, if you've got an appointment in the morning, and I think it does depend on your relationship with your manager, because all my colleagues have children, and they are not expected to be dropping off their kids at 6 o'clock to school. They come when they've dropped off their children, and if they've got an appointment they need to take their children to, they are more than welcome to take them. I regularly ask my manager, can I go for a dentist appointment? And she says, yeah, if you need a dentist appointment, you need it. You're at Harper North, it feels like your kind of life comes first and then your work. So we kind of all, and because we're a small team, we're able to work around each other's schedules. So I know my manager's schedule, not because she makes me look at her diary, but because I know when she has to pick up her child and drop them off, and she knows when I need to leave a bit earlier, that kind of stuff. And the social aspect of Harper North is Like, you're not expected to go out for drinks if you don't want to. Like, I don't drink, so nobody will expect me to go to the pub with them after a publication. We'll go to like a more neutral place like pizza or something, and it's very accommodating in terms of schedule and like what you kind of require from the job. Definitely.
Yeah. Very good. Thanks ever so much for your time, everyone. Thanks for coming. Thanks to all of our panelists. And yeah, I think, I don't know, get in touch with us via, I don't know, Write an Artist website, or I'm sure Dan will take emails from you guys as well. If you've got any questions that you didn't want to ask or something that occurs to you afterwards. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the festival. Thanks for your time.
Thanks for hosting us.
No worries.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Explore Words, Discover Worlds podcast with Bradford Literature Festival. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe, share this episode with others and leave a rating. Mark your calendars for the return of Bradford Literature Festival, Friday the 3rd to Sunday the 12th of July 2026.